Hi guys, it's Lily again. I'm still wearing the same clothes, I'm still talking about the same thing. So this video is going to be all about the DS-160 application and the kinds of questions that you get asked and the things that you need to have with you to streamline the process. I'm just gonna warn you guys now, this application is really intense. Okay, I went into it thinking that I was going to be maybe okay, but I really wasn't. It was really draining, it took ages, and I just really need everyone to understand that it is a really hard, not so much difficult, but just really draining process. So, all warnings aside, let's get started, shall we? To get to the application, you need to go to a website called www.ustraveldocs.com/au/index.html. It'll come up with a little window that says, is this your first time or have you applied for a visa before? Up to you which one you pick, but this particular video is going to be based off the idea that you clicked yes, it was your first time. So if you click no, you might have to take different paths to get to certain pages, but the basics will still be the same. If you click yes, it'll take you to a page that asks you what kind of visa you're applying for. I had to actually look this up because I wasn't even sure, but it's definitely a non-immigrant visa. So you just click non-immigrant visa and proceed to the next page. Somewhere on this page I completely forgot to write down exactly where it was on the page, but somewhere on the page it should say complete the non-immigrant visa electronic application in brackets DS-160 form. So if you click that, it'll take you to a whole new page which has an overview of something. I honestly can't remember. This whole process has been a complete blur. But yeah, if you read over that information or maybe even print a copy of it, it might be useful to read it. I honestly can't remember because I remember reading it, but I don't remember what I read. Down the bottom, it'll have a link where it says, you know, click here to complete the form. So you click that. This page was really visually confusing because it seemed like a lot of the important information was over to the left-hand side, but most of it was actually over to the right, and it was kind of smushed. Over to the right hand side of the page, it'll have a little drop down box and it'll ask you where you're applying for your visa. So you click on that, obviously decide where you're applying for your visa. I picked Melbourne because I'm from Melbourne. Underneath, it'll come up with some kind of a link where you can test your photo. Now, the photos have been a bit of a point of confusion for a lot of people because visa photos are a different size to passport photos. Visa photos are actually square. If you go to Australia Post, they will tell you that visa photos and passport photos are the same. They are not. Let me tell you, they definitely are not. There are certain places that sell visa-sized photos. I highly recommend, if you can, find somewhere that actually does visa, like specifically visa-sized photos. But due to the magic of technology, the consulate people have designed a photograph testing wizard where you can take the photograph you've got, put it into the wizard, and try and mess around with it to make it fit. So you chuck it in there, you scan it in, whatever it is, and you can zoom in on it and like readjust the frame to try and get your face within the two green templates, I guess you'd call them. They're like green lines that's like the shape of a head and then a neck. And then around it again, the shape of a head and then a neck. And then there's a box to show you exactly how big the photo needs to be. You just have to try and fit the outline of your face in between those two green outlines. And if you can do that, it'll save it. You can save a copy to your own computer, and then when you go back, it'll ask you if you want to continue to fill in your visa application with that photo attached. So you can continue your application without having to do the whole photo manipulation process again, which is great. Once you've chosen continue using this photo, it'll take you back to the original page, which will have your location that you selected, that you're applying for your visa. It'll then have the photograph, and it'll be in a little green box to tell you You did it! You somehow found a photo that fits our weird requirements. Then you can start the application. Get ready. First, it'll come up with a page that has your application ID. You will be assigned one. It'll be like, here it is, this is yours. I highly recommend that you print this page or write down this number somewhere, because if you leave the window inactive for a certain amount of time, and I honestly have no idea what that amount of time is, it will time you out and you will have to log back in again using that number and a security question which you set on the next page. Make sure you write down that number, because if you don't, you're going to have to start all over again. After you've printed that out, you go to the next page and it'll have a page where you can set up a security question. So it'll be like, what was your mother's maiden name? And like, these are really weird security questions. They're not your general, what was your first pet, or what was the first street you lived on. It was like, what street did you live on when you were 8? Not 9, not 7, 8. What was your mother's name? What was your father's name? All kinds of weird questions. You pick a question, you type in the answer, and then you save it. So if your application becomes inactive or something goes wrong with your computer, you can use your application ID and your security question to get back in. You're at the beginning of the application. That's right, you haven't even started yet. So the first page asks for your name, any other names you've used legally, so like if you got married and changed your name, if you go by aliases, if you have other identification with other names on it, blah 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 blah. It asks you for something called a telecode. I don't believe we have one of these, so I don't think you have to put it in. It asks you for your sex, your marital status, date of birth and place of birth, and then you can go to the next page, which asks for your country of origin, any kind of national identification number, social security number, or tax ID that you may have. I don't believe as Australians we have one of these. And then you go to the next page, which asks you for your home address, your mailing address, phone number, your email. You then proceed to the next page, which asks you all about your passport. It wants to know your passport type, your passport number, country of issue, city of issue, issue date, expiry date, and if you've had any other passports previously that were lost or stolen. You then can go to the next page, which asks you the purpose of your visa, your date of arrival, your estimated length of stay, the address you will stay at, and the person or entity funding your trip. This is where I again harp on you guys to make sure that you download those immigration documents that were attached to your offer letter. All of the details about Disney that they ask you for in the visa are listed specifically in the last 2 pages of the immigration documents, so that you guys know what to put in when you get asked in the form. So it has the address that you're staying at, it has the contact details of immigration compliance, which they ask you for later. Pretty much anything Disney related that has to go into the form is in those immigration documents. So make sure you have a copy, or you know someone that has a copy, because you will need them, okay? It's not just a convenience issue anymore, you actually will need them. And just as an aside, the person or entity funding your trip is the person who's paying for flights, accommodation, whatever. If you're buying your flights and everything to get there, then the person funding your trip is you. If your parents are paying for your flights, then the person funding the trip is your parents. It then asks you if you have any travel companions coming with you. It then asks you about your previous travel in the US, any previous US visas you may have, if you've ever been refused a visa before, if you've ever been denied travel in the United States, if you've ever submitted an immigrant petition before. It then asks you for your US contact person. There is no single person listed in the immigration documents, so most of us just put do not know for that one. And then when it asks you for contact organization, we put Disney. It then asks you for your relationship, which you would then put employer. It then asks you for the employer or point of contact address, which again is in the immigration information. It then asks you for your employer or point of contact's phone number and email, which are also in the immigration documents. It asks you for your mother's details and your father's details, including like names, middle names, where they're from, that kind of stuff. It asks you if you have any relatives in the United States. And then we move on to more stuff about you. It asks you your primary occupation, and if you're still studying, it would probably be student, considering that you aren't eligible for the program unless you're doing study full-time. You'd probably put university or school as your full-time occupation. It then asks for your school or employer's details, their address, their phone number, etc., and a description of your duties. So if you put a job first, it'd be stuff like customer service, blah 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 blah. If you put a university, you could either say not applicable or stuff like attending classes. It then asks you for your previous employment. A lot of people who put studying or university as their primary occupation put their current employment as previous occupation because there's no place for you to put primary occupation and then secondary occupation. A lot of us figured that by putting our current occupation as previous, it showed that we were making money and that we were earning enough to be able to afford to go over to the United States. It doesn't actually let you put the date that you're applying or any future date as the end date of your occupation, so you can just put like the day before or whatever. Then it goes into a whole lot of security questions. It asks you if you have any diseases, mental or physical disorders, or drug addictions that would interfere with your ability to work a job over there. It asks you if you've ever been arrested or convicted for a crime, if you've ever violated a law relating to controlled substances, if you've ever been involved in prostitution, money laundering, human trafficking, or if you have ever been involved in assisting people with human trafficking, or if you're related to anyone who has been involved or assisting human trafficking. And then it says any other illegal activity. I'm pretty sure illegal activity would have just covered it, but that's just my opinion. It then asks if you've ever been involved in any terrorist activities or terrorist financing, or if you are a member of a terrorist organization. It asks you if you've ever been involved in genocide, torture, or other acts of violence. If you've ever recruited child soldiers. If you have ever, while employed as a government official, committed severe violation of religious freedom. If you've ever been involved in enforcement of population control, coercive transplantation of human organs. If you've ever had to attend a deportation hearing. If you've ever been involved in unlawful entry into the United States, either yourself or if you've ever assisted anyone. If you've ever failed to show up for a deportation hearing. If you've ever overstayed a visa or committed any other violation of the terms of a visa. If you've ever withheld custody of a child, voted in the USA against the law, renounced US citizenship to avoid taxes, attended a school without reimbursing the school. That's it. There are 29 security questions over, I think, 3 pages. So there are a lot of security questions and it's a lot to go over, and it doesn't take that long, but it's very intense. Afterwards, it asks you for additional points of contact in your home country. Up the top, it says that you've indicated that you're going to be studying in the US. Later on, it asks you if you're going to be studying, and you can click no without fear of your visa being rejected because it's a work visa, not a study visa. But it does ask you for additional points of contact. You have to have 2. And you need information from them like their full name, including any middle names, phone number, address, email, that kind of thing. Then asks you for your CVIS ID, your program number, and your intention to study. You can click yes or no for that one. Then asks you to confirm your location. It'll have your address information and you just confirm it. You then have to sign the document electronically to say that to the best of your knowledge, all of the information you provided is correct and up to date. And then once you've done that, it'll have a confirmation page with your photo, most of your details like your name and your passport number and stuff like that. And you have to print this. I cannot stress this enough. There was a girl at my interview who did not have this page with her and she was sent away. So you need to have the DS-160 confirmation page. I'd print maybe even 2 just to make sure that if you lose one, you've got a spare. Please, please, please remember to print this. And then you're done. Once you've printed out your DS-160 confirmation page, you somehow have to manage to book your appointment and pay your fee. Somehow I missed this before I started the application, but it doesn't actually matter when you do it. Some people managed to find an instruction page that told you to log in first before you completed your application. I couldn't find this, and so I didn't end up logging in until after I'd actually submitted my application. Up in the top corner of the page, one of the links up the top will be log in. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to click that. You click new user, create a login with like an email address and password, and you click new application / schedule appointment. It'll ask you again whether you're doing an immigrant or non-immigrant visa, and you click non-immigrant visa. You then have to select where you want your appointment to be. So again, I clicked Melbourne. You then select your visa category and your visa class. Then you have to plug in your personal data all over again, but it's not as much as it was on the actual application. So you have to put in your passport data, your date of birth, your nationality, your name, your country of birth, your gender, your DS-160 number, 2 phone numbers, a home and a mobile, your home address, your service number, your exchange or program number. On this form it's called your exchange number, but on your DS-2019 it's called your program number. They're the same thing. It then asks you if you have any dependents. The next page asks if you're applying for this new visa within 12 months of an old visa expiring. It then asks you to confirm your postal address, and then you get taken to a cost page. You need to click see payment options, and then you can put in all of your payment information. Then it gives you a receipt number. I originally wrote down to take note of this receipt number, but for some reason it actually gets stored in the computer. It might not be too bad of an idea to write it down anyway, but it seems to just take that receipt number and plug it straight into the next form. So you should be okay without writing it down. You then click a little button that says continue scheduling appointment. It'll take you back to the cost page, but now it'll have the receipt number plugged into it. So then you can click continue. It'll then have a little calendar that'll show, I think it's all of the ones that are unavailable are faded out. So you just click on a date that suits you, and it should have a couple of times. I just picked a date, picked a time, and go to the next page. It'll come up with a confirmation page, which you need to print, okay? I don't want to go too far into it because that's a story for my next video, but if by some mishap they lose your appointment in their system, the only way for you to prove to them that you have an appointment is if you take that confirmation page with you. So please, please, please take my advice and print it. Then you're done. You're done! The way I'm describing it now, it doesn't sound too hard, but some of the questions are really a little bit confusing, and the photo thing is just really frustrating. And considering it took me a good half hour to find where to even book an appointment, it took way longer than it should have, and I really, really hope that this video helps a few people find the right way to go. At least you can all learn from my mistakes. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I really, really hope this helped people. My next video is going to be about the visa appointment, folks, so tune in for that. Bye!